After turning off the tap, Darryl looked in the mirror as he wiped out his face. He was still stressed out since he left the cab. Darryl Faudner couldn't toss away the thought of failing his meeting with Miss Delaforce for his promotion request. He wanted that promotion so bad only for the sake of his newborn baby. With a jobless fiancée having zero motivation to hustle, he had less time to argue. All charges in the house had burdened him until he would have that promotion. However, Darryl mostly thought of not failing than winning that promotion as an assistant manager in the marketing department of his workplace. Squeezing his loosening tie, he made a last check all over his body as he first smelled his armpits. His perfume was still top notch. Glancing at his waist, he straightened his watch and his Hermes belt. Darryl cleared his throat, then tossed some Mentos inside his mouth before going back to his seat. On his way, Darryl limped as a waiter lifted a food tray full of chicken Alfredo crisps and salads. Passing below the waiter's arm, Darryl quickly glanced by the entrance and recognized that diamond ring of the restaurant counter. That ring that used to knock on his desk and give him some impossible tasks to do belonged to one of his old fears, Mrs. Dale. Looking at all the moves inside Carinos, Darryl sighed when he found out Mrs. Dale sitting with an old dude. She won't change that 35 years old lady. She always opened her legs to strangers. Though the nose of dropping forks and knives and the smell of food made him hungry, Darryl was shaking as he took a seat. Within a time frame of 2 minutes, a waitress came next to Darryl to take his order. A glass of water and some shrimp with rice would be enough for him. Right on time, he received a text message from Mrs. Delaforce asking for some slow-cooked T-bone steak and broccoli, and he quickly grasped the waitress' hand. Both stared at each other, and Darryl didn't want to release the girl's hand. "I like you," Darryl whispered as the waitress chuckled and left him alone. Yet, he didn't feel lonely since the waitress took out all the stress he had been carrying out. Darryl didn't take off that smile she put on his face easily until the familiar Giorgio Armani Si Passione fragrance dominated the craving smell of food. Miss Delaforce dropped a black Chanel bag on the table, then took a seat in front of him. "I hope I didn't make you wait for too long." "Not at all, ma'am. I just came here 30 minutes earlier to make sure everything is alright." Darryl bowed his head down as if that would help him get rid of the whole stress coming back. "Relax, Darryl. This isn't a only professional dinner. It's also a get-to-know-each-other moment." Darryl stalled and looked at the far left corner of the restaurant where Miss Dale was sitting. He felt that moment of déjà vu, a moment in which he miserably failed to get the same job because he declined to sleep with Miss Dale. Darryl zoned out until he heard, "Darryl, are you okay?" asked Mrs. Delaforce with a lovely voice. "We can postpone that friendly meeting for another night." "Yeah, right, a friendly meeting," Darryl thought as he felt his boss hand rubbing his. "I'm okay. I just want to keep things the way they always are. You know what I mean?" He found his eyes. "Like keeping everything professional." "Sure." Miss Delaforce removed her hand and Darryl gulped, thinking he shouldn't have said that, as he couldn't guess whether his boss' smiles were sincere or not. Darryl stopped the eye contact with his boss. The waitress came back again to get Mrs. Delaforce's drink, and Darryl paid attention to her name tag. That young and wonderful woman was known as Helen. looking at the waitress, blowing hair and taking a sip of his drink. Darryl incautiously spilled the water over his zip and gasped. Before he could even think of picking up a napkin, Ellen helped him out by handing him a tissue from her pocket. Darryl cared less of her beautiful smile, for he was too amazed by her kindness as well. Ignoring the lady in front of him, he would rather go lower than the social status of his baby's mom to date Helen. Unfortunately, his happiness got shortened as Mrs. Delafosse cleared her throat and asked for 2 glasses of wine. I see you interested in young women. Mrs. Delafosse quickly smiled. Is this why you rejected me? No, ma'am. I respect you as my boss. I wouldn't even try to date someone's wife. This is out of my limits. I see you trying to look like a good guy, but you told me you need that job because of your newborn child. What happened to his mother? She's not stable right now, and won't be until she decides to stop being little daddy's girl. I'm sick of paying everything in the house. I could hook you up for one condition. Please don't ask me to sleep with you. Darryl thought as she carried on. Every weekend, I'm overloaded with work while you guys are out there taking care of your wonderful lives. I need someone to help me reduce my stress level at work. I need someone that could. Hey, Darryl, how charming you still are, said Miss Dale as she headed to the restroom. Good evening, ma'am. Miss Dale glared at Mrs. Delafosse. I never met your family, Darryl. It's a pleasure to meet your grandma. Darryl frowned as she snorted. You're mistaking me for somebody else. I'm Mrs. Delafosse, his boss. Darryl smiled and stood up. Knowing something bad could happen at any time, he moved away from the table, then put his hand over the old boss' shoulders. Miss Dale, could you take your leave now? I'm in the middle of something important. Like what? Eating on your grandmother? Excuse me, ma'am, but this is what he has done when he worked for me. Mrs. Delafosse stood up, yet Darryl grabbed her hand and asked her to calm down. On her way back to Darryl's table with the 2 glasses and a bottle of wine as ordered, Ellen served Darryl and Mrs. Delafosse before she politely asked Miss Dale to get back on her seat, then took more information about what just occurred from Darryl. Worn out from those unnecessary arguments, he said nothing but threw his hand. Darryl listened to Ellen's wise word and sat down. He chugged his glass of water and got back on the conversation. So where were we? Excuse me, sir. Call me Darryl, please. Okay. It won't be long anyway. We have a shortage of rice. Would you mind change your side for some fries, beans, or broccoli? Some broccoli should be fine. Darryl smiled. After a conversation of 30 minutes, Darryl finally agreed to help his boss during the weekend in one condition, on the fact he could bring his baby. As his boss agreed and left the place, Darryl waited for his credit card while fishing some dollars from his pocket to tip Ellen. When the waitress came back with his credit card, Darryl put her hand toward him to whisper in her ears. Ellen smirked, then wrote down a phone number. Darryl smiled more than before until a gunshot occurred in the restaurant. Gasping as he was losing a lot of blood from his shoulder, Darryl remained sat and looked at his aggressor, pulling harder Ellen's left arm and pointing the gun on his forehead. I finally found you, you piece of crap. You're the man my girl's been cheating on me with. Now it's time for you to say your last prayer. You're dead. As another gunshot occurred, Darryl woke up from a nightmare. Looking at the phone clock, he sighed. That was a close one. Darryl said at 6:12 a.m. After